All right, I'm going to hit record now. All right, recording. So Rick, let us know when we're live and I'll do the Open Public Meetings Act announcement. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for February 9th, 2022. Good evening. Notice has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and sending a copy to the Montclair Times, Star Ledger, and Herald News. This is a virtual public hearing. A link for members of the public to join is included in the agenda, which is available on the Montclair website, as is a link to the township's YouTube channel where the hearing can be viewed live or thereafter. The hearing is also being televised on channel 34. Before we do roll, on the agenda tonight, we have two items that are being carried. We have application 2761, which is for 376 to 380 Claremont Avenue. Isolde Bedell Family Partners. This item has been carried to the March 2nd, 2022 meeting. And then under new business, application 2778, which is 136 Upper Mountain Avenue, right in Deblis. This item has also been carried to the March 2nd, 2022 meeting.
And they'll be carried with no further notice, and the login information will be on the township's website.
That's correct. Thank you, Mike. And I'll go ahead and I'll do the roll call now. Mr. Church, Mr. McCulloch,
Present.
Mr. Moore,
Present.
Mr. Harrison,
Here.
Ms. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Caulfield,
Here.
and Mr. Vieira,
Here.
Mr. Sullivan,
Here.
and I am here as well, the Assistant Secretary, Assistant Planner.
Hey, Tommy, I
all right.
see that Jay Church is listed as an attendee.
Oh, I see. Okay, let's add him as a panelist really quick. Mr. Church, Mr. Church, as soon as you're able, please turn your camera and your mic on and let us know that you can hear and see everything that's going on, please. Hello, Mr. Church.
Yes. Can you
All right,
hear me?
Mr. Church, yes, we can.
We can hear
Mr.
you.
Church
We
is
can't
present.
see you.
Can't see me. How can I get my face up there? I'm here. Can't seem to get my face up there. Can you help me out here?
I am not able to turn your camera on or off myself.
What?
There's a button at the bottom that says start video next to audio.
Or next
Okay.
to the mute.
Next to the
button.
mute button, you should have a.
I don't have that showing for some reason.
Are you on your laptop or phone?
Lap.
And you're at full screen.
No.
Expand the screen and then it should show up.
And there may be a camera icon that you can just click.
No, I'm not getting it. Well, if you really want to see me, let me try to get back in again,
Okay.
and I'll join you in progress.
Okay.
Let me try to get back in. I don't know what happened. I usually just get right in.
Oh. Why don't we do the minutes while
Yeah,
Jay?
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have the minutes of the December 8th meeting. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
There a second?
Second, Caulfield.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any no votes? Okay, minutes are
Ms.
approved.
Harris, I believe you're ineligible to vote on those minutes from December 8th.
Okay, abstain.
And we have the minutes of the January 26th meeting. I don't have any changes to those minutes. Anyone else with any changes?
No.
Nope.
Move the,
I'll move approval.
is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any
Mr. Moore is
opposed?
ineligible for that one, just so you know.
And any abstentions?
To get in.
And then we have the resolution for the Sharma application on Columbus Avenue. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
And Tommy, who's eligible to vote on that?
On this one, everyone's eligible except for Ms. Harris. That was from the December 8th meeting.
Someone want to move the resolution?
Move it. I'll move the resolution.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
And we have the resolution for the Adams application on Watchung Avenue. I have two changes, just so it's clear. In number 6, on page 2, have it read, the addition is proposed to maintain. So, because it's, since we ended up modifying that, and then, so it's clear we didn't approve totally what they said on the whereas on the 4th line after it says structure ended, prove that with the imposed conditions. So you're inserting with the imposed conditions.
Okay.
Any other changes to that resolution? Not someone want to move the resolution as amended?
I'll move the resolution as amended.
Or a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The next resolution is that for the Venkatesh property on Highland Avenue. I'm abstaining. So is there anyone else with any changes to the resolution? If not, someone want to move the resolution?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And I abstain.
And Mr. Moore, you should abstain as well.
Okay, Tommy, can I let me just go back to the January 26 meetings, the minutes rather, across the caption on the top of all the subsequent pages, it says January 12, so you just got to fix that.
Oh, I see. Okay, will do.
Okay, then the first application is that of Edward Sperber and Kathleen Milburn. This is for property at 81 Watchung Avenue. This is an application for variances to construct a new detached garage. The property is in the R1 one family residential zone and is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 2 in Block 2502. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-46A2, which requires that accessory structures have a side yard setback of 6 feet, where the proposed garage would have a side yard setback of 3 feet, and a variance is also requested from Montclair Code Section 347-46A3, which requires that accessory structures have a rear yard setback of 6 feet, where the proposed garage would have a rear yard setback of 3 feet. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
Yes.
And who is here on behalf of the applicant? I see Kathleen Milburn is present.
Ms. Milburn, you should be able to activate your camera and your microphone now. As should Jonathan Bazuski. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, the architect.
Okay, it's close enough.
Ms. Milburn, I
Okay.
just unmuted you. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, very good. Who's going to, is the applicants, Edward and Kathleen, are you going to testify, or are you going to throw it over to the architect?
We are going to just introduce our architect. We
Let me
just have to,
let's swear you in case you say something factual. So would you both raise your right hands? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
yes.
All right, state your names and addresses, please.
I'm Kathleen Milburn. I live at 81 Watchung Avenue in Montclair.
Edward Sperber, same address.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I have lived in Montclair since 1990 and love the town. Ed and I purchased 81 Watchung Avenue last year. And, you know, we're really enjoying being the caretaker of this home, which was vacant for some time before we purchased it. We do have a problem with our garage, and our architect is here to help us present our plans and answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Michael, you want to swear in the architect?
Yes, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
Just state your name and address, please.
Sure. It's Jonathan Bashevsky, 21 Vowens Lane, Raritan, New Jersey, 08869.
And Mr. Bashevsky, you are a registered architect in the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Correct.
And your license is in good standing?
It is.
Okay, you can proceed.
So my clients called me out to their property. Can I share my screen on here?
You can't, but I can. So if there's any of the exhibits you provided, I can pull them up on the
Sure.
screen. Just gotta let me know.
If you could pull up the PDF of the first page A00.
Sure, just give me one sec to share my screen.
And if you can zoom in on the two photos that are on the cover sheet.
Totally apologize for that. Okay.
Okay, so the top photo is a photo of the house from the street, and you can see the garage towards the rear. The second photo is in the backyard looking at the garage. There's a large tree that has grown into the side of the garage towards the neighboring property. It's also pretty infested with termites, and it needs to be replaced. If you can zoom down now to the existing site plan on the bottom left. Yeah, so you can see the existing garage right now is off of the rear yard by 1.4 feet. It's off to the side yard by 0.7 feet at the nearest and 1.1 feet furthest. And if you can pan over to the right to the proposed site plan. So what my clients and I are proposing is to replace the garage, spacing it 3 feet off of the property line. 6 feet is required, as you know. but we're trying to keep it from, projecting way too far into the rear of the yard. And this is a pretty good compromise. And we also reduced the size of the garage. The existing garage right now is approximately 378 square feet, and we would be reducing it to 360 square feet. You can go over to the next page. So we tried to, I mean, some of the limitations with height, size were pretty limiting, especially on an older home that has larger, that has steeper roof pitches and, more space for it. So we took a piece of the front of the house and tried to kind of compress it to match some of the existing architectural features. We would be using, instead of stucco, a fiber cement vertical board and bat siding. And then on the front elevation of the house, there is some lap siding in some of the gable ends. So we're trying to pull from that, as well as the roof that runs underneath the window. So we thought this was a pretty good solution to replace their existing garage. I'd be happy to take any questions anyone might have.
Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions?
I think at this particular moment, my question is the tree. Because the tree is currently dislodging the existing garage. So is that tree going to remain, or is that tree going to be removed?
No, that tree is going to be removed. It definitely has some insect infestation in it. There are some limbs that don't look so healthy, and there's a lot of vines growing on it. It is an older tree, and considering that some of the root base might be damaged from protruding into the structure, I would be concerned of it falling, actually, if we had a big storm. The homeowners do plan on replanting along the fence in the rear yard, some new trees. I know they were talking about some evergreens to create more of a natural hedge along the fence line.
So when you remove the tree and move forward with the plan for constructing a new garage, a part of the new garage will be in the space where the tree currently exists. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how will that affect visibility of the garage from the street? Right now, based on the presentation that you gave us, we have a full view of the garage. So will that shift then, offer a partial view instead? Is that how you see it?
Correct. I mean, it would be more obscured than it is now, but only so slightly. If you were to stand directly in front of the house, you would barely see the garage. Staring down the driveway, similar to the perspective that you're showing right now, you would see it slightly less because it would be moving approximately 2 feet to the left.
Mm-hmm. And the hedge that separates the two properties, who does that belong to?
I'm not sure. It's right on the property line.
So I guess both homeowners maintain their side of it. Is that how that works?
I would assume so, yes.
And then I didn't have an opportunity to visit the property, so that's why I'm asking some of the questions on the thing. So is there a rear door access to the house from where the garage is?
There is, yes.
So with and the intent is for the garage to be a single car garage or a 2-car?
No, it's a single car.
Yes,
That's
the
a
door
single
entrance.
door. It's more like a car and a half.
And so when a vehicle would be pulling into that space, any pedestrian traffic or movement or whatever in the rear yard would be able to easily see the vehicle.
Correct.
All right, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
None at the moment.
Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Caulfield, do you have any questions?
Just two, Chair. Miss Milburn, have you ever walked between the two garages?
I'm sorry, can you
Have you
repeat
ever,
that?
have you ever walked between the two garages there?
No,
I
you
mean,
can't.
Are you gonna? Yeah, I think you
It's so,
can.
the space right now is, I mean, you have to be really thin. I'm not thin
That's true.
enough.
That's true. Even myself. Are you going to put a fence? Because after you move the garage in, are you going to put a fence up on that side as well?
We're not sure. We're very much in touch with our neighbor who we share the driveway with, and we're going to really talk about the fencing that we want to put along the back part of the property to see if we want to extend that between the two garages. We really haven't decided, but we would work with our neighbor
Okay.
on that.
Okay. A question to the architect. Is it going to be an electric door? Is this an electric garage door in this facility?
We haven't gotten that far in the design, but I would assume so, yeah.
Is there any idea about liters and that stuff on the garage, about water? I don't see your drawings having any.
No, I typically
depiction
show
of-
those during the construction drawings, but the
Okay.
leaders would pitch to the driveway, and the driveway pitches to the road. So that's
Okay.
where the stormwater would go.
And I would think that Ms. Milburn, I mean, there's a town ordinance. If you remove a tree, you have to plant a tree. I'm sure she'd be okay with planting a new tree.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're
All right,
they're
thank
aware
you.
of that, and they plan on planting
All
more
right.
trees.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, a question for the architect. The foundation of the existing garage, is that going to remain, or you'll pour a new foundation?
It's going to be a new foundation because it's going to move substantially away from the current location, about 2 feet to 3 feet, 2 feet from the rear, 2 feet from the side yard, 3 feet from the rear, approximately. And I don't think there is actually a foundation there. I'm pretty sure it's just poured concrete on grade.
Okay.
So it'd be new.
Yeah, and I guess the other question was, did you consider the concept to be 6 feet away from the property line? And was that too difficult for the radius of the car?
That was part of it. The driveway would need to be extended, which would increase the impervious coverage. But the homeowners intend to plant as much as they can in the rear yard. And I wanted to try to keep as much room on the site in the rear yard for them to be able to enjoy their backyard and not have it be occupied with just the garage. So we did talk about it, but it didn't seem practical for what they were looking to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions. We're now going to open it up to the public. So if there are any members of the public who want to either ask questions or make a statement or give testimony about the application, if you could raise your hand, because we're having problems unmuting you. So if you could do that, hopefully you all know how to do that. There's a little icon bottom right of my screen that with a little hand, that if you click on that, it will raise your hand and we will then activate you to be a participant so you can participate. So if you want to participate, click on that little button and we will call on you.
And alternatively, you can type into the chat in WebEx if you're having issues raising your hand. I'm monitoring that right now to see if anybody has anything. So feel free to post in there if you're having issues.
The chat is also on the bottom right beneath the raised hand. If you click on that, you'll be able to type in and say you want to participate. And we will again activate you so you can participate.
At this time, I'm not seeing any raised hands. I'm not able to unmute any of the attendees currently, and I haven't gotten any messages in the chat.
Okay, is there anything any of the three of you want to add before we discuss and vote on the application?
No, I don't think there's anything else I could add.
Okay,
Nothing more from us.
okay, we'll start discussion with Mr. Church.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have no problem with this application. I vote in favor of it.
Mr. McCulloch,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm generally in support of this application.
Mr. Moore,
I'm in favor of the application.
Ms. Harris,
I'm in favor.
Mr. Caulfield,
I too am in favor.
Mr. Vieira.
I'm also in favor of the application.
I'm also in favor of the application. I think they have a very difficult situation, the way the driveway, the house are situated. I think they're improving the existing setbacks to 3 feet, which we've pretty much uniformly required as a minimum. To require the 6 feet, if they to adhere to both the 6 feet for both setbacks would create a very awkward maneuver to get in and out of the garage because of the location of the house, and would significantly reduce what is already a small rear yard that they have. I think 2 conditions: that the drainage from the roof be directed so it does not go onto the neighboring properties, and that they adhere to the township's tree removal ordinance. Any further discussion? And if not, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Go build your new garage and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next application is that of Montclair Kimberly Academy Foundation. This is for property located at 201 Valley Road. This is an application for final site plan approval to reconfigure their existing athletic fields on the property and to install new dugouts, fencing, landscaping, and other site improvements. The property is located in the R1 one-family zone and is designated on the township tax maps as Block 1515, lots 1 and 12. The Board of Adjustment previously granted a number of variances for the proposed use and granted preliminary site plan approval subject to a number of conditions, which the applicant needed to demonstrate compliance with to get final site plan approval. Mr. Tremblay, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, I should check with the notice in order.
It
Tommy?
is, yes.
Okay. Mr. Tremblay, proceed.
Thank you. Tommy, do we, I don't know if you've let anybody else into the meeting, but there should be 3 people for this application on my side, Kathryn Davison, James Castelli, and Robert Walsh.
I just want the third person, and so all 3 of you should be able to turn your mics on and your cameras on.
Great. Thanks, Tommy. Good evening, everyone. Alan Tremulak appearing on behalf of Montclair Kimberly Academy, the applicant in this application, which involves the MKA Middle School at 201 Valley Road. This is an application for final site plan approval for reconfiguration of the ball fields at the middle school. As many of the board members, I think, will recall, We appeared before you in connection with this project almost exactly 2 years ago, just prior to the onset of the pandemic. At that time, after I think 2 public meetings, the board approved all of the variances that we required in order to proceed with this project. And the board also granted conditional use approval and preliminary site plan approval. The resolution ultimately adopted by the board contained 15 conditions, one of which was that we return to you for final site plan approval. And that's what brings us here tonight, final site plan approval. The site plan has not changed in any significant way from the plan that was preliminarily approved 2 years ago. There have been a few minor changes really to comply with the conditions of the approval, but it's the same plan that you approved preliminarily 2 years ago. We certainly don't intend to review all of the details of that plan again this evening or to repeat the testimony that was provided at the prior hearing. However, there are just 2, I think, important aspects of this project that bear repeating. The purpose of the project, as was described 2 years ago and as remains the case, is simply to improve the functionality and the utilization of the ball fields on the property and to improve safety conditions by eliminating what's currently an overlap between the baseball and softball fields, the way the fields are currently configured. Purpose of this project is not in any way to increase or intensify the use of the existing facilities, but simply to allow them to be used in a more functional and efficient way. And at the same time, another benefit of the project, which was discussed at length, I think, and recited in the board's resolution of approval, is that to correct some serious drainage problems that have affected not only the MKA ball fields, but also some of the adjacent neighbors. That's a side benefit of this project, but an important one. But as I mentioned, the purpose of this project is not in any way to increase the usage of these fields, so that the fields, assuming this project it goes forward after final approval, the fields will continue to be utilized in much the same way as they, I shouldn't say as they were used today. Let's say as they were used prior to the pandemic. The existing teams, the same teams, the same programs are utilized the field as in the past. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there are 15 conditions attached to the granting of preliminary approval. 7 of those conditions required either plan revisions or additional information to be submitted by the applicant. So what we intend to do this evening is to address those 7 items that required revisions or additional submissions and demonstrate to the board that we have complied with the requirements of the preliminary approval. So I intend to do that with 2 witnesses. I think I'm going to call as my first witness the project architect, Robert Walsh, and then following his testimony, Kathryn Davison will testify on behalf of MKA, and if necessary, James Castelli will assist or supplement her testimony. I think it might be helpful, Mr. Chairman, if I could pre-mark before we start the testimony 6 exhibits, all of which the board has and they're posted on the website.
Okay, why don't you do that?
Okay, and I'm going to do these in the order in which I intend to present the exhibits. A1 would be the revised landscape plan prepared by Mr. Walsh. I'm not sure if there's a date on that or not, but it's a one-page supplemental plan. A2 would be a retaining wall exhibit also prepared by Robert Walsh. A3 would be a document that's entitled MKA Middle School Field Usage. A4 would be a document that is actually attached to the application as an exhibit or an attachment to the application, which is a list of dates of games scheduled for the middle school fields. A5 is an exhibit which consists of 11 photographs. And finally, A6 is a PowerPoint presentation with sound recordings to comply with one of the board's conditions. So if I may, I'd like to call Robert Walsh as my first witness.
Mr. Walsh, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
Robert Walsh, 701 New Brunswick Avenue, Phillipsburg, New Jersey.
Mr. Walsh, you're a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes.
And you testified before this board 2 years ago in the prior application?
Yes, I did.
Is your license in good standing today?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Chairman, proceed. Be qualified as a professional engineer?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Walsh, just really have a few questions to relate to discuss plan revisions that you made in accordance with the board's prior resolution from 2020. First off, condition number 9 in that resolution required that the proposed sidewalk along Central Avenue be extended southward to connect with the existing sidewalk at Bel Air Drive. Has that changed? Has that been addressed in your revised plans?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And that would be in the plan set that was originally submitted with the application?
That is in the plan set that the latest revision is June 2nd of 2020, which was submitted to the board most recently. And it's the latest revision identifies it as revised per Hudson Essex Passaic Soil Conservation District comments. However, you know, that revision included the comments from the resolution, and it's indicated on I believe the drawing C02, but it should be shown there as extend the sidewalk to that nearest intersection.
Yeah. Okay. Condition number 10 of the prior resolution referred to the board engineer's report and specifically 2 comments. One comment indicated that approval was required from the Hudson Essex Passaic Soil Conservation District. Do you know whether that approval has been obtained?
Yes, it has, as well as the state approval that's associated with that for disturbances over 1 acre. All of that documentation and approvals have been submitted to the borough or to the township, and they were copied on those approvals, and we've sent them separately. So the township has a copy of that information.
Okay. And then the second comment in the board engineer's letter that was included as a condition of the approval, I'll just mention, this is comment number 14 was simply a comment that that we not do anything that would adversely affect drainage, just a general comment or condition. I can certainly represent to the board that we will comply with that, and we would expect that to be a condition of the board's resolution, hopefully granting final site plan approval.
Yes, and I just want to, you mentioned, I thought you said condition number 14, but I believe
Yeah.
it's condition number 11. But I'm looking at a draft resolution now. That's the only thing I have handy.
Well, it's comment number 14 in the engineer's letter.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was referring to the resolution.
No, I don't.
think it
I
is-
understand.
I think it's
Yeah.
resolution item number 11, and I would just like to, because it's a comment that addresses things that may come up during construction, and if there's going to be a resolution drafted relative to the final approval, I request that though any issues that come up during construction be addressed administratively through the whether the boards or the township's engineer, and that we don't have to go, if some issue comes up due to excavation or what have you, and we have to do more drainage improvements, that we're able to do that administratively with the review of the board's engineer. And I think that's important to expedite the project and not to have a construction site left open.
Well, the borough engineer is going to make that decision. If the borough engineer is comfortable with the scope of a change during the course of the construction, then it'll be permitted. If the borough engineer, the township engineer rather, is not comfortable with it, it may get kicked back to the board for some reason. But that'll be handled. That's typically handled administratively. But I think the point
I
is
just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, the point is that item 14 in the January 31, 2020 report from the former board engineer, that's going to be carried forward as a condition of final approval if this application is approved.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. All right, Mr. Walsh. Condition number 12 required that a landscaping plan be revised to include additional trees. Has that been addressed?
Yes, it's been revised and submitted, and I believe it was reviewed at the technical review committee meeting. I'm not sure.
All right. Now, is that
Town has it.
all right? And are those revisions reflected on the exhibit that we pre-marked as A1, the one-page revised landscape plan?
Yes, and if Tommy could throw that up there, I can verify that. Yes, that's it, because it's got the bubbles on the planting list, and if you go to the very top of the drawing, you'll see where 90% of the plantings occurred. It was between the tennis courts and the northern part of the new fields. Yes, that is there.
And those plantings include native species, correct?
Exactly.
I think. Okay. And then the final condition that I'd like you to address was condition number 14, which dealt with the length of the fence / retaining wall shall not exceed 113 feet. And I know that issue was also discussed before the Development Review Committee, but can you address that this evening?
Absolutely. So Tommy has up there the bubble drawing that I sent over, that this 113-foot distance of the wall that is adjacent to the existing playground, we want to put the fence on top of the wall. That was a variance that was approved. It identified the distance of 113 feet. And from the northern point of that wall length, moving forward, the wall tapers down to like 1 foot. And in order to put a fine point on it, we would, beyond that 113-foot point, we would step the fence back 42 inches to comply with the ordinance. And this is one of those things that, you know, when the resolution got adopted, it referenced 113 feet. The wall actually tapers down from there, so it kind of transitions. But in order to eliminate that thing in its entirety, beyond that 113-foot distance, we would step the fence back 42 inches from the face of the wall, eliminating any type of concern relative to the requirements of that variance.
Okay. And just for the record, the exhibit that is on the screen that you were just referring to, that's what we marked as Exhibit A3 as the retaining wall plan. Are there any other significant revisions to the site plan from what was previously reviewed and approved by the board 2 years ago?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions for Mr. Walsh?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Church?
I have no questions.
Mr. Moore?
No questions at the moment.
Ms. Harris?
No questions.
Mr. Caulfield?
Yes, Mr. Walsh, when that fence steps back 42 inches from that wall, can people go through that fence and wall there at that location?
No.
No, okay, so the fence will make it like an L shape type of thing?
Yes.
Okay, you'll make an L shape like that. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vieira?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Mr. Walsh. I guess what's not clear to me is, you know, the question about drainage. I know Mr. Tremblay mentioned that there have been historical issues with drainage, so I'm just trying to understand what those were and if there was any mitigation done at the site.
Currently, the site has, I gotta say, poorly draining soils in terms of the subsoil infiltration rate. We had a geotechnical engineer go out there and do a subsurface evaluation. And then we've designed a stormwater management system that would reduce the runoff rate for the 100-year storm to about 50% what it is. We over-designed the system because, as the applicant has stated, that even if they get, under the current conditions, even if they get a little bit of rain, it ends up canceling games and stuff because the field becomes not playable. So with the vertically drained synthetic turf system, there's a whole reservoir beneath the turf that will store water and contain it and release it at a super low rate. That is, you know, part of the basic design of the project, is just make the fields playable under normal rain conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a number of questions. First, just so I understand about the wall and fence combination. So is your testimony that only 113 feet of the wall and fence will be non-conforming and that the remainder will conform to the ordinance?
That is correct.
Okay, and Tommy, can you put the landscaping plan up? Because, oh, can you put it up? Put up the part with the planning schedule. And if you, okay. So I guess I'm trying to, so the plants you have bubbled, okay, so the 3 plants you have bubbled under trees, those are new additions to the plants, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then for the compact inkberry, you've added 8 additional compact inkberry, and those are the changes to what was the landscaping plan, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Then one other issue, and I don't know if you're the person to address it, so I went to the property over the weekend, and there, sitting in what used to be a large parking lot, was a building, and was not there when we originally granted preliminary site plan approval. And do you know anything about that building?
I think I'm going to let the applicant address this, but you may be talking about temporary structures that were coronavirus issues. So I'm going to defer to either Kathryn or Jim Castelli.
Okay, that's okay. And then the certification from the Soil Conservation District, those expire, lapse, whatever the word is, after a period of time. Do you know what the status of the the certification you got is?
I do not. I may have those documents handy, but whatever it is, we're gonna
You'll renew it if necessary. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. We're going to, because this is going to be difficult, we're going to defer until all the witnesses have testified for any questions from members of the public, but you will have an opportunity at that point to ask any of the witnesses questions. Okay. You want to call your next witness?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kathryn Davison?
Yes, here.
Okay, Ms. Davison, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
Kathryn Davison, 34 Glenwood Road, Montclair.
Okay. Kathryn, you testified in connection with the prior application 2 years ago, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just remind the board what your position is at MKA and how long you've had that position.
I'm the Chief Financial Officer at MKA, and I've been at the school for 7 years.
Okay. And have you been directly and if not intimately involved with this project from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. And perhaps we can start, maybe you can answer the question that the chairman had regarding the structures in the parking lot.
Yeah, so they're
And what those
temporary.
are.
Yeah, so they're temporary kind of trailers for classroom space that we installed last year during the pandemic, really to help us meet the social distancing requirements that we were kind of required to meet in terms of classroom spacing, and that we're still having to kind of deal with in the school at the moment. So the plan is for those trailers to be removed kind of in the spring or towards the end of the school year.
Okay. And you had to get building permits in order to install those trailers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And permits were obtained?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there are 3 other conditions of approval that I'd like you to address. First of all, condition number 1 required that the applicant provide a detailed list of athletic programs, use of the middle school fields, broken down by time of year, days of the week, frequency of use, and hours of use. Was there an exhibit prepared to provide that information?
Yes.
All right, Tommy, can you pull up exhibit what I marked as A4, the middle school field usage? No, not that one. It's the 1-page exhibit that we submitted
That's it.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Was that schedule prepared either by you or under your supervision?
Yes, under my supervision. Yes.
Okay. All right. And does that contain a complete list of the teams and programs that utilize these fields throughout the year?
Yes.
Okay. It's basically, correct me if I'm wrong, the soccer teams, baseball and softball teams, and the middle school football team?
Yes.
Okay.
And-
And the days of the week and the hours that are shown on here, that's based upon prior usage of the fields. You know, or
Yeah.
current. That's the way the fields are currently used and have been used. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the way the fields are presently used, but it's also the way the fields have been used, pre-pandemic.
And you would expect to continue with that same schedule after this project is completed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, there wouldn't be any additional teams or additional programs utilizing the fields that don't currently utilize the fields. Is that right?
No, there'll be no additional programs or teams.
Okay. Another condition of the preliminary approval, which is condition number 2, required that we provide a list of the dates of scheduled games at the property over a minimum of the last 3 years. Has that information been provided?
Yes.
Okay. And Tommy, thank you. The document that's now on the screen, that was also prepared by either you or someone under your supervision at the school.
Yes.
And that's a list of all scheduled games to be held at the field for the period that's shown on the exhibit. I can't see the dates right now. September.
I think it's 20th
2018. Okay.
to the June 4th, 2021. Yes.
Okay. 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 The last condition I wanted you to like you to address was probably the one that was, logistically the most challenging one for the school. And that was a requirement that noise levels be measured during a simulated baseball and softball game with fans in the bleachers at a distance equivalent to the proposed temporary bleachers to the neighboring properties on Central Avenue and Bel Air Drive. Now, we're now looking at an exhibit, which we marked as A6, which is a PowerPoint. Well, why don't you tell us what this is, and then you can go through the slides, and Tommy will switch the slides as you're going through them, explaining what they are.
Okay. Yeah, so this is just a PowerPoint kind of explaining how we undertook the noise level measurements, and then just showing those recordings and sort of kind of showing where those, where the bleachers were positioned, and then where we measured the noise levels at the property levels. So, Tommy, I don't know if you want to start walking through the slides.
Next slide.
Yeah, so I think the first slide is just addresses the condition that was in the township resolution, saying that we should measure the noise levels during a simulated baseball or softball game. Really, primarily the fans in the bleachers, kind of at a location where they would be under the new plan, and then to measure the noise levels at the property lines, kind of for the neighbouring properties at Bel Air and then on Central Avenue.
Next slide.
So I think kind of one of the decisions we had to make was, unfortunately, I think in 2020, shortly after our last meeting at the town, obviously clearly we did not have any sports or a sports season, as school was closed and we were fully remote during that period. And then during the 2021 year, we've had limitations on spectators. And so we've had sort of greatly constrained kind of games in terms of what has gone on those fields. So, you know, sort of one of the decisions, also there's been mask requirements, and it's been something that we kind of, so, you know, for both of these sports, they are probably one of the less well-attended sports that we have. So in terms of sizing, you know, what, you know, kind of the size of the group that we had on the bleachers, I think we sort of took an estimate of 15 to 20 people per stand. And this was really based on our experience, how people watch those games, the coaches' estimates. We also reviewed the roster size for both the boys' baseball team, which has been historically, you know, 18, is currently 18 boys and has been that size, and the girls' softball team, which is 14 students on that roster. And we also went back and looked at a lot of pictures and a lot of kind of footage of our games to really get at the pre-pandemic. So the images that you're seeing are from the 2018 and 2019 baseball seasons and softball seasons. So you can see kind of what type of turnout we have at these games. I think, do we want to move on to the next slide? So I think one of the, so on this PowerPoint, you can see there are sort of 4 locations where bleachers, they're actually movable bleachers, will be placed in the new plan, the temporary bleachers. So there's sort of, they're like shown as A, B, C, and D on this site plan. And they were the places that we really focused on kind of putting, you know, spectators on those bleachers and sort of simulating their noise, like in each of those locations. And then for each of those locations, taking sound level measurements at the property line at the places shown. So for, you know, location A, we measured the sound at 0.1 on the property line. For location B, we measured at 0.2. For location C, we took a measurement at 0.3. And then at location D, we took a measurement at 0.4.
Before you go, before you continue, you can go on to the next slide, Tommy, but before you just explain how this was done, who did this, and the equipment, the sound measuring device, I guess that is, that we see on this, on the screen now. Just
Yes.
some details regarding that.
Yes, so we used a decibel meter, and we kind of asked for volunteers from people who work at the school. I think we actually had 19 volunteers, and they, you know, we moved the bleachers to where they'll be under the new plan, and had them sit on the bleachers and basically, you know, chat, talk, clap, cheer, carry on as you would at a game, and then measured the sound at the location on the property line using a decibel meter. And then search. James Castelli took the measurements. So if he has more specific questions about the equipment, he would be probably the appropriate person to answer that. And then we filmed kind of someone, you know, a colleague of James's, filmed him taking those measurements at each of the locations.
Sorry, so are you able to play that now? I guess, Tommy, you might have to hit the...
Yeah, so I can hit play. I'm not sure audioly what's going to happen, if it's actually going to sound for the meeting or if you're just going to be able to see it from your end, but I'll play the videos and you can see the recording. So I'll go ahead and play it now. I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah.
So, but just so everyone else is aware that there was a PDF posted in this project file that had a link to this presentation in the Google Drive where anybody can access it and play these videos and listen to the sound recording. So we're not able to play them during the meeting tonight out loud, but we're able to, I guess, see the readings on the meters. So I wanted to point that out.
Are we able to see the readings? I
think on the video you
everybody
can
else
see.
can, but
Yeah, on the video you can see the readings, so you can see the numbers. I think the sound measurements ranged between 50.2 decibels and 57.2 decibels, like on each of the records.
okay. You want to go to the next slide? I guess that's the second reading.
Yeah. This is the part that we didn't practice.
So while this is, we can't hear the sound, obviously, but if anyone were to listen to, the recordings that are on the town website, what would they hear as the noise that's being measured on the piece of equipment?
I think it's people clapping, talking, sort of the occasional cheer. I mean, it was a group of, 19 adults simulating kind of, and you can see from the video, I think we tried to show where the stand location was. So it was people sort of, a group of people simulating what you'd hear at like a game.
As best you could do under the circumstances, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think these were done in the fall of 21. I think, I think we were hoping for, I think we were hoping for less disruption and less restrictions, and I think, that hasn't worked out that way this fall.
All right, and then the last page, well, you can tell us what that is.
Yeah, this is basically the summary. So if you watch those videos, it shows the range of kind of the measurements that were recorded, the high and the low. So at location 1, the range was from 50 to 55.5 decibels. Location 2 is 50.8 to 57.2. Location 3, it was 53 to 56.7. And location 4, the measurements were from 50.8 to 54.7.
Okay.
Decibels. So the over kind of high and the low was from 50.2 decibels to 57.2 decibels.
Okay. All right. Tom, can you pull up the photos that I marked as Exhibit A5, I think? And should probably have had you had shown these before the PowerPoint, but we can take a look at them now if Tommy can pull that exhibit up. There you go. If Kathryn, if Tommy can just, there are a total of 11 of these. Can you just explain, what these photos depict and why we're sort of presenting them?
Yeah, I think it was just to speak to when we were simulating the game, what we were simulating, or just to kind of show the general attendance that we get at baseball and softball games. So I think we sort of went through, because I think we really wanted to understand, what kind of attendance we had, and sort of be able to replicate that. So this is actually from I think these are from the 2018 and 2019 seasons. So just, I think these were the ones that we could find that actually had pictures of the stands and pictures of attendance at games. So that's a softball game. I think softball was more challenging. Just to give you an idea of, how many people are sitting. This is obviously from the 2021 year, but the others are from a colleague of mine from the 2018-2019 seasons. So just really to kind of look at what we were trying to replicate in terms of game attendance, but also to give an understanding of, what these games look like and what, who's sitting in the bleachers for these games.
Right. And the games are typically during weekdays and late afternoon hours?
Yes.
Okay. You don't have any, you're not bringing in any sellout crowds for those games, I take it.
I think that, and they are predominantly parent spectators. These are not games that draw student crowds. They're certainly not, I think one of the issues is things like lacrosse, we have the girls and boys lacrosse teams playing at the same time, and they tend to be the games that perhaps draw bigger crowds or livelier crowds. So it is not like a football game with cheerleaders and a busload of kids turning up. These are very, kind of sedate. They probably plan to be that. And part of that's the program size, is that they don't have particularly large rosters, and these are small teams. And it's also just the nature of those games in terms of how people watch them.
Okay. And this is what you were trying to replicate or simulate on the in doing the sound recordings, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, one, I think, final question. I know from prior applications, not only involving this property, but other properties owned by MKA, that you've always tried to meet with the neighbors before coming before this board. Did you did you schedule a meeting or meet with the neighbors regarding the current application that we're discussing tonight?
Yes, so we've had actually 3 meetings. 2 of them since our February 2020 meeting in front of the town. We then scheduled meetings on March 14th and March 16th in 2020. I must say they were fairly lightly attended because they were just on the cusp of the beginning of the pandemic. But we did have neighbours come, and we did meet with neighbours then, really to kind of hear their concerns from the planning meeting, to be able to respond to them and be able to incorporate them into changes in our kind of plans or things that we could adjust. And then we met again following, I think it was the development committee, when we'd had feedback from them on January 31st. We sent out an invite. I think the invite actually went out on January 25th because we've been dealing with the disruption caused by this latest wave of the pandemic, and I think that's when we felt comfortable having our health and safety committee agreed that we could have visitors on the campus. So we sort of met with, we sort of opened up the school for neighbours on January 31st and had a sort of a meeting then, which was also lightly attended.
And were invitations actually hand delivered to the neighbors for that meeting?
Yeah, we did hand deliver just because we wanted to make sure that they got them as quickly as we could.
Okay, so there were some neighbors that came in, and did you discuss the plans, and actually did you have this PowerPoint or the video available?
We directed them to the video. We talked about how we'd done the sound recordings. We had both Mr. Walsh was there to discuss any questions they might have had about the plan. So he talked about the revised planting, and he also discussed drainage with the neighbours. And then we were there to kind of listen to other concerns they may have had and answer any other questions they may have about the plans.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Make a comment first and then a couple of questions. Ms. Davison, first of all, my comment is to just offer a word of gratitude to you and to your colleagues and staff for the leadership that you provided, not only to MKA, but to the children of Montclair during a very difficult period. And so just want you to know that I know there are many like me who are very grateful for their leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions for you. First of all, related to the sound recordings that we were just discussing. So fortunately, MKA has had a history of successful athletic teams. So, while you have the reality of sort of the ongoing events of elongated seasons. There are also opportunities to participate in playoffs or championships, etc. And I'm just wondering, in terms of crowd levels, do you see, or are you aware of sort of a spike in the number of people? I know you said it wouldn't be equivalent to a football game, but nonetheless, would there be a sort of spike in terms of the numbers of people that might be attending when so that level of competition is floating, and how that might change the decibel level?
I'm probably going to have Jimmy check it as of comment, but I believe some of the games are actually not played at our, so the kind of the championship games and those finals games aren't actually necessarily played at our location. They tend to be played at a kind of another site. But he can jump in because it's been a while since we've been in that place with our with both our baseball and our softball programs. So I certainly know that for field hockey and soccer and lacrosse, for something like this, the states and the prep bees and those types of competitions that we're involved in, those are as you progress through the rounds, are actually played at other locations usually. So it is really, I've not been there since we've been in that position with these programs. So I'm actually going to defer to Jimmy so he can talk to you about what that might look like in terms of crowds and what that might look and where those games are actually played.
All right, so he may want to speak to that a little bit later.
Yeah,
that'll be fine. So along the sort of the same line, you talked about the types of athletic activities that do take place on the grounds, and you made the comparison between the sort of the pre-COVID period and now as things are beginning to open up again. And so did I understand from you that the types of athletic activities on the grounds will mirror the sort of the pre-COVID period? In other words, there are not additional teams that are envisioned as part of sort of the schedule of activities.
Yes. So, and during COVID, when we could, the teams have certainly practiced. It may just not, they may have had a reduced game schedule. So an example is some of our middle school seasons were cancelled. Some middle school teams during COVID just had lessons, but they weren't playing other teams. But where we have been able to have a regular kind of season, regular in terms of maybe no spectators, or limit it on spectators and controls around what they could do. We have had as much of that program in place as possible, but there are no intentions to change the use of the fields and the program that we have on the fields.
Thank you. And then, so the last question then is, the fields, are they used for anything other than athletic activities? I mean, are there other types of events that take place on those fields at other times during the course of the year?
Yeah, so they're used every day from school for recess. So they're used for recess, and then they're used for lunch recess. So that's a huge use of the fields that, is existing and has been in place. And then they're also used for our own PE program for the middle school students. So they come out and have, physical education classes on those fields just as part of the school program. So it's a school use during the day by the school children, by the kids, and that's been in place, forever. And obviously that would continue. And then the athletics program use is really from 3 p.m. onwards when the school day ends.
And there would not be things like graduation exercises or concerts or things like that would.
So right now we've had use on the fields because we've actually been outside. So we have been in things like band practice and things like that, and choral classes have been out there. So there's been unusual use during the pandemic, but it isn't. I think we have Cougar Pride Day, which has historically happened on the middle school fields, where they have, it's a once a year event where there's like bouncy castles, and kind of there's like a school event like on the field normally in the spring. So I guess the hope is that we maybe continue some form of those, some form of that event, but it really isn't. I think they're listed on the use schedule, and then there's a camp that runs in the summer that uses both. So there's an MKA Star Camp, which a lot of like MKA and non-MKA students attend. It's a very kind of popular local camp, and the fields are used by the campers, for camp activities.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
I would like,
Jay, you're getting feedback because you're on two devices, and
what does that mean?
it shows. Are you?
I muted
using
one
the
of them.
microphone on one and the video on the other.
Yeah. Well, I'll defer my question.
Why don't you try just being on the one and see the one with the camera and see if that works?
I just muted one and unmuted the other and switched them, so maybe now it will.
Okay, Jay, why don't you give it a try now?
Okay. It's still feeding back.
I think, Tommy, I think as long as he has both devices on, you get the feedback. I've had the same problem in my other life.
Okay, I'll hold my questions. That's all right.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have any questions? Mr. Moore?
He's muted.
I see that. Mr. Moore? Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Moore as well. Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
No, I think Ms. Davison answered all of my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Caulfield?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Ms. Davison, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Listen, I think I have a new course for MKA, Sound Recording 101. Thank you for for doing all that work. One quick question on your schedules, the summer schedules. There's a Legion baseball. Is that a town? Do you know if that's a town use at all?
It's only a program outside of MKA. I know that Alan can speak to the. Is it Alan? Can speak
Yeah,
to the program?
yeah, I think you're right. No, I think that's right. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have questions?
I have no questions at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have some questions. If both you and Mr. Trembulac have represented there be no increase in use. So if we put a condition on limiting you to the number of games and practices and the hours and days of use, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Trembulac, you're going to be calling another witness who can speak in more detail about the field usage.
Yes.
Okay, because I have some questions which I think would be better asked to him, because I want to
Okay.
somewhat narrow down what we're doing so we're not being unduly restrictive, but not letting them suddenly have twice as many games as they currently have there. Okay, I had, just bear with me a second. The summer camp use is weekday only?
Yes.
And do you know what the hours those are?
So pretty much the same as a school day. So from like sort of just before 8 till 3. Or sort of 3, and then there's an extended day program, but they're on the fields in the same, they're on the playground and kind of recess areas of just as our school extended day would be.
Okay, I have no further questions. And again, for members of the public, when we'll open this up for you to ask questions once all the witnesses have testified, so we don't have to keep going back and forth. Mr. Trembulak, you want to call your last witness?
Sure. James Castelli.
Mr. Castelli, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, sir.
State your name and address, please.
James Castelli, 228 Orange Road, Montclair.
Jim, what is your position with Montclair Kimberly Academy?
I'm Director of Physical Plant and Security.
Okay, so you oversee, does part of that include overseeing the use of the athletic fields?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how long have you had that position?
11 years.
Okay. So based on your experience, let's just, if you can, address the question that Mr. McCullough raised about, possibility of larger crowds during perhaps playoff games or championship games, where you might have more people than usual. I mean, have you had experience with that? And if so, can you share that with the board?
Sure, no problem. To be honest with you, I've been there, like I said, 11 years, and I don't believe if we had maybe one county baseball game at our home site, that might be it. I don't even recall it, but I'm just saying we might have missed one. And girls softball hasn't even had a county game at our site. So it's very rare. We haven't had outstanding baseball and softball teams in the past since I've been there. There are maybe 1 or 2 prep games held there, but mostly the schedule that you see is the games that we would have played on the field.
Okay, and with respect to the schedule that was submitted and that Ms. Davison referenced, which explains the programs utilizing the fields and the days of the week and the hours that those programs utilize the fields. Are you generally familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and would you be in a position to answer any questions then that Mr. Harrison might have?
Sure, absolutely.
Regarding that? Because I really don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman, but I wanted him to be able to respond to the questions that you had relating to the field usage.
We'll give the other board members a chance first. Mr. McCullough, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Church, you're still on both, so I assume you'll.
No questions.
Mr. Moore, do you have any questions? Yes.
No questions.
Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Caulfield, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, okay, so just to continue, on the schedule that was given to us, there are a number of items, not a lot, but for both the boys baseball and the softball, where it says ECT prelim, ECT second prelim, and I assume ECT stands for Essex County Tournament. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, and so in those instances where that's listed, and there's there would be at least a few tournament games that are conducted at the field, correct?
Not really. You have to be the higher seed. They just put that in there just in case they are the higher seed, which unfortunately doesn't happen often. So if you're the higher seed, you can get a home game. So it is possible, but it doesn't happen that often. They put that in there just in case we are a higher seed team.
And hopefully the teams will get better and that'll occur.
That'd be great. I would love it.
And where it says NJSI AA, those again would be tournament games for the state tournament, is that correct?
Yes.
And the same situation there.
Same situation. You got to be a higher seed to have a home game.
Okay, I think, and I'm trying to do this in a way that's not unduly restrictive, but is still consistent with you're not having greater usage than now. But I assume that year to year there's some variation in the number of home games you would have for either baseball or softball. Is that correct?
Yes, it's usually around 10, but it could be 9 one year, it could probably be 11, but it usually stays in about the 10. And that's only for baseball and softball. In the fall, the games, there's even less. If you look at the games for the soccer, like there's like, I think some teams played 8 in 3 years.
Right. And the fall usage, that's only junior varsity and middle school usage for football and soccer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the varsity teams play at another location, correct?
Correct.
Is that, I mean, so, which, I've been to MKA football games. I mean, that certainly has a larger crowd than what you would have at your use at this field, correct?
Yes, we usually have maybe 1 or 2, possibly 3 eighth grade games a year. And JV games, if it's 1, it's a lot. They try to get it on the main field if they can, just to give the kids like experience to play on the main field. Football is very minimal.
And what about soccer?
Soccer, like I said, if you look at the schedule, there's not a lot of games. I think if I don't want to be wrong, but if you look at the girls, they might have played like 8 games in the last 3 years. And I know 2020 wasn't in there because we didn't play at all. But there are more soccer games than football games, absolutely.
Okay.
It's the same usage that it always was.
So if we limited the number of games to the max, you gave us for 3 years because that's what the condition did, and I have not counted, but it looks to me like the pre-pandemic years there were greater usage, which is hardly surprising. Limited to the maximum usage that you show for any 1 year for any of those events, would that be acceptable?
Yes, I believe it would. Like I said, it could be 1 or 2 in either way, though, of course.
I think if we do maximum, that, I thought probably, and I think what I would do is to do for the fall sports, just add up the total soccer, football usage, and just that's the total for the greatest use year, and then that gives you flexibility as the schedules vary year to year. Does that sound like a workable condition?
Sure. Yeah, just as long as, like we were saying before, if a baseball or softball team did get to the counties and they did have a good year, you could play 3 or 4 games home more. It's very possible. And even in the parochials too, the prep games. So I just don't want to be limited and then all of a sudden, we're playing an extra 4 or 5 games.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Mr. Tremblay, do you have any further witnesses?
No, we don't, Mr. Chairman. That completes our presentation.
We're now going to open it up to the public. Tommy, can you put the agenda up with the phone number in case we have anyone watching on YouTube or Channel 34? And if there Any members of the public who are on via computer, please either hit the raise hand function or hit the chat function. And if they're hitting the chat, type in and say, I want to participate. And or if you raise your hand, we'll make you a participant so you can either ask questions or give testimony. And if anyone is watching on the Montclair YouTube channel or on channel 34 and you want to call in, you can call in at the number there, which is 1-408-418-9388, and then there's an access code to enter. But we'll leave this open for a little bit to give anyone a chance who either wants to call in and participate or wants to use the chat function or the raise hand function to indicate you want to participate. But this will be an opportunity to either ask questions of any of the three witnesses or to give testimony in support or opposition or any comments you want to have concerning the application. So, you know, if you want to participate, please indicate in either by calling or using the chat function or the raise hand function.
So far, no indication that anybody wishes to make any comments.
And we'll wait another minute or two. Again, this is, you know, your one chance to participate if you're interested in participating. Okay, I think we can safely assume that no one is interested in participating. Mr. Trembulac, you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. Be very brief. I think it's obvious we've satisfied the conditions of the preliminary approval, provided the revised plans that were required. We provided the information. Noise levels that the board requested. So I think we've satisfied all the conditions that can be satisfied. We would anticipate that the board will carry through and continue the other conditions that were listed in the preliminary approval resolution regarding the limitations. We'd expect that those would carry through and be conditions of the final approval, as well as whatever other conditions you may feel are appropriate, Mr. Chair, regarding limiting the usage of the fields, you know, consistent with the testimony that's been provided. So for that reason, I would request that the board approve the application subject to those conditions.
Jay, do you want to try cutting one of your devices off and seeing if
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you but with feedback?
Okay, which device? Video?
Probably the cell phone.
Yeah. You are you using your cell phone, Jay?
No, I'm not. I'm really not.
So, but it's what do you have on? Do you have two computers on?
No, I have one. But I got my name up there twice.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because for whatever reason, it's treating you as having two devices, and that's creating the feedback.
I can get rid of one of them. We can remove them from the meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Do the
one that's muted right now is the one that I will take off.
You hear me?
Okay, I've made one an attendee.
give it a try now, Jay.
Okay. No, it's still feeding. I don't know what it is.
And the other, let me try removing fully the other one instead of making an attendee. I'll try that. All right. Anything now?
No, it's still.
Okay. Okay. Why don't I mean, why don't you try switching it the other way, and we'll start discussion with Mr. McCulloch, and we'll come back to Jay and see if we figured out a solution, or we might reach the point where he can just say he agrees with the prior comments and or disagrees with the prior comments, and then we'll have to figure out how to get his participation a little more. But Mr. McCulloch, why don't you start the discussion while we're trying technology fixes for Mr. Church?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think generally in support of giving the final approval. I do feel as though a good faith effort has been made to satisfy the concerns that our board articulated 2 years ago, and appreciate that they worked hard on this. Hearing the concern that you expressed, Mr. Chairman, perhaps a solution in terms of the scheduling would be that we would look at imposing a limitation on regular season schedules that are consistent with the exhibits that were provided to us, and to allow for exceptional circumstances should any of the athletic teams merit participation in the tournament and the opportunity to host games as a result of that. That would be one way of doing it, where we know that normatively the number of games would in fact be limited, and but it would provide some leniency for extraordinary circumstances where a team has exceeding expectations. Those would be my comments.
Okay, Mr. Moore.
I'm generally in favor of the application, but certainly taking into consideration the restrictions that were mentioned by our colleague, Mr. McCulloch. I'm in agreement with him.
Ms. Harris?
I'm in favor of this application. I think the applicant has complied with our conditions from the initial approval. And I appreciate the efforts that the applicant has made to show that they have complied. So I approve of this application.
Okay, Mr. Caulfield?
I'm in favor of this application. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vieira?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also in favor of the application. I appreciate the due diligence of the applicant and the detail in the plan. So I will be in support of this application.
Mr. Church, we'll give it another try.
Looks like now there's no audio, just video. So I think maybe, oh wait, hold on. Mr. Church?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the application.
You actually
You're not echoing
seem to
anymore.
have fixed it. If you want to say anything else.
That's enough.
I said it.
Okay. I'm also in favor of the application. I think the applicant has demonstrated they have complied with the conditions of the approval. I think I'm going to go over what will sound like a lot of conditions, but most of them are carryovers from our prior approval. But first, let me start with that the usage of the field for either athletic practices or games be limited to the days and times that were indicated on the exhibit, which I guess was A3 that was provided to us, that the usage for games in the fall be limited to the total number of regular season games combined for girls and boys soccer and junior varsity and I guess it's called 8th grade football, and that any and that for the spring the maximum for any 1 year be the total number of games for softball and baseball that are shown on this schedule, and that any tournament games that would be played at the field would be over and above those limits. The other, related to that would be that there would be no varsity soccer or football games at the field. That we would then continue conditions 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then what is condition 10, which was then number 10 of the former engineer's comment.
Is that 10 or 14, Bill?
What?
I thought it was 14 in that number 10.
We'll get to 14. 10 is.
No. I'm sorry. The condition 10 of the prior resolution carried forth 2 prior comments of the engineer.
Right, and I'm doing both of them.
Okay, gotcha.
One of modifying 10 that the certification from the Soil Conservation District be kept current. And then we would also do number 14 under number 10, that we would do 11, that number 12 would be modified so it would read that the landscaping adhere to the revised landscaping plan that was submitted. And then number 13, and we should continue number 14, so there's no question about that. And then I wanted to do my unfriendly condition of that before the renovated fields are used, that either the temporary classroom trailers that were added, that they either be removed or the applicant apply for approval to keep them on the property. But they've eliminated a significant number of parking spaces, and due to the concerns the neighbors have raised on prior applications about parking on the adjoining streets, I think either we need to address that as in an application if they're going to remain, or they need to leave. And the testimony was they were leaving this spring. I think by giving them until the fields are ready to be used, that's giving them much more time than that to either remove them or come into us for an approval of those. Any other discussion from members of the board, or if not, does someone want to make a motion?
I move approval.
Take a moment to make a motion.
Yes, I move approval with the recommendations of the chair.
I second.
Okay, why don't we do a roll call just so there's no question?
Okay, Mr. Church,
Aye.
Mr. McCullough,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Caulfield,
Yes.
and Mr. Vieira.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay, and then
Thank you.
board members, our next meeting is March 2nd, which has a much fuller agenda than the past two meetings, so don't anticipate another early night, because I doubt that it will be one. I'm not sure everyone seemed to like March 2nd as a date that they would appear on. We've had several applicants requesting that date because, I don't know, it must be a very popular date. So we'll see you all on March 2nd. We're not meeting next week because we weren't able to reschedule folks for that, and we'll see you March 2nd. And someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
To make a motion to adjourn for the evening?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night.